The Wind River Reservation is home to both the Eastern Shoshone and Northern Arapaho tribes. The reservation encompasses 2.2 million acres, makes up about one-third of Fremont County, and is the seventh largest reservation in the United States. There is growing interest by both foreign and domestic tourists in reservations and native cultures. Visitors to Wyoming often engage in outdoor recreation, take a drive around Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Parks, or stay at a dude ranch to test out the cowboy lifestyle. But many also have an interest in the native people and cultures that exist within the state. Indigenous peoples have been playing host, often unwillingly, to Europeans and later Americans for centuries. The first European thought to have stepped foot in the Western Hemisphere is Leif Erikson, a Norse explorer. He did so half a millennium before Christopher Columbus made his navigational error. As Crystal Markowitz in her article, Cultural Tourism, Exploration or Exploitation of American Indians states, quote, "Many Native Americans have much more experience dealing with tourists than tourists have dealing with Native Americans." Welcome to the Rediscover the Winds podcast, a podcast by the Fremont County Museums. With museums in DuBois, Riverton, and Lander, the Fremont County Museum System is committed to collecting, preserving, and interpreting the stories of Fremont County and the Wind River area. The unique artifacts found at our museums relate the history of central Wyoming with information which, in many cases, can't be found anywhere else. With the Rediscover the Winds podcast, we hope to bring some of that history to you, wherever you are listening. Last episode, we told the story of Eugene Amoretti. Amoretti was an immigrant from Italy who was instrumental in the economic and industrial development of the Lander Valley. We explored the wide variety of businesses and real estate he owned and looked at how he utilized interest in Yellowstone National Park to boost Lander's tourism industry. Finally, we explored the legacy and impact of Eugene Amoretti and his family on the city and community of Lander. This episode will continue with our theme of tourism and travel as we look at tourism on the Wind River Reservation. Originally created in 1868 with the Fort Bridger Treaty, the Shoshone Reservation was established as a homeland for the Eastern Shoshone people. The Northern Arapaho were placed on the reservation a decade later in 1878. In 1938, 60 years later, half of the reservation was officially established for the Northern Arapaho, and the reservation was renamed Wind River. Since then, economic developments on the reservation have come in a variety of forms. In the modern era, tourism has been a source of economic revenue. In 2025, Wyoming welcomed 8.8 million visitors who spent an estimated $5 billion. Fremont County had an estimated 518,000 visitors who spent about $181 million. However, while tourism can be a source of revenue, Native tribes often have to assess both the costs and benefits of tourism. Tourism can bring economic opportunities, provide employment, and allow for tourists to receive knowledge and education directly from a tribe itself. It also requires a tribe and its members to consent to the presence of tourists on their lands, even if they are restricted to specific sites and/or visitor centers. Further, tribes that open up pieces of their land to tourists often deal with a whole host of ignorance. International tourists in particular tend to have high levels of interest in Native Americans, quote, but they sometimes hold the most vivid stereotypes. As a museum staff member at Riverton Museum, which is located in Riverton, Wyoming, a town which is completely surrounded by the Wind River Reservation, I can personally attest to these uninformed visitors. We once had a group of European tourists in the museum who asked me, quote, "How do Native Americans dress?" When I replied, "Well, like us," they seemed both confused and disappointed. Apparently lacking a feather headdress and buckskin clothing somehow relinquished someone of their native identity. Additionally, tourism regarding Native Americans has often been done by non-natives without the consent of the tribe or culture that is being used and profited off of. This exploitative model entails that tribal members are not consulted and their culture is used for profit while they receive none of the compensation. This type of tourism often plays into stereotypes, promotes incorrect information, and lacks any Indigenous perspective. This is why Indigenous-led tourism is crucial. It allows tribal members to share their histories, culture, and worldviews directly. This model also allows for more Indigenous control and sovereignty over the land and culture they wish to share with tourists. Further, it can help reduce stereotypes and allows tribes to reap the financial benefits of their own tourism initiatives. However, it is important, especially for non natives, to remember that reservations and native peoples themselves are not tourist attractions. Reservations are people's homes, they are their neighborhoods and communities. Both the Eastern Shoshone and Northern Arapaho have developed and continue to develop plans for tourism on the Wind River Reservation. There are the typical attractions, such as casinos, but both tribes have created initiatives that go far beyond this. The Eastern Shoshone operate a cultural center in Fort Washakie, while the Northern Arapaho have the Northern Arapaho Experience Culture Room at the Wind River Casino. These spaces allow both tribes to tell their history and share their cultural artifacts with guests. The Wind River Visitors Council, a group which promotes tourism in the Wind River region, partnered with both tribes to create a driving tour of the reservation. This tour, which can be listened to whilst one is driving through the reservation, tells visitors information about a number of sites. These include Fort Washakie, Reverend Robert's Mission, Sacagawea's gravesite, Fort Washakie Cemetery, St. Stephen's Mission, and more. Further, it gives listeners a chance to hear both Eastern Shoshone and Northern Arapaho creation stories told by tribal members. This provides tourists the ability to not only take in the sights of the reservation, but also allows them to learn and engage with these cultures and their stories. The driving tour also makes sure to highlight both the Eastern Shoshone and Northern Arapaho powwow grounds. Powwows are gatherings where dances and often dance competitions take place. The Eastern Shoshone powwow in Fort Washakie is home to Wyoming's largest powwow, while the Northern Arapaho powwow is noted as being the oldest powwow in Wyoming, having started in the 1950s. Powwows can be huge gatherings with hundreds of dancers dressed in traditional regalia, accompanied by drums and singers. Chikahe, one of the narrators on the reservation driving tour, states, quote, "You might be surprised to learn that the modern powwow is a relatively new tradition in the long history of American Indians. It evolved in the early 20th century after indigenous people were forced onto reservations. In an act of solidarity, Plains Indians developed sacred drum rituals and dances, some adapted from centuries-old ceremonies, to make peace with each other and celebrate reunifications of tribes separated by the government. These gatherings were also used to preserve the indigenous cultures that the government was working hard to erase at the time." Powwows are a unique experience for tourists and non-natives, as many indigenous ceremonies are closed to the public, but powwows are generally open to everyone. With that said, it is important for tourists to remember that powwows are not held for them. Tourists are welcomed onto the reservation and are able to experience a piece of indigenous culture, but there have often been instances of tourists being frustrated that powwows do not start at the exact time they were scheduled for. As Crystal Markowitz notes, quote, "They did not understand that the powwow was not being held simply for their pleasure. Powwows are ceremonies open to all, but they are not what one might consider a usual tourist attraction. Powwows will unfold at a particular tribe's discretion and direction." Another aspect of tourism that has been expanded on the reservation is that of ecotourism. Ecotourism can be defined as, quote, "responsible travel to natural areas that conserves the environment, sustains the well-being of the local people, and involves interpretation and education." A good example of this is the Wind River Tribal Buffalo Initiative. This organization has sought to restore bison to reservation lands. Their mission is, quote, "to restore conservation buffalo through land rematriation, community revitalization, and youth education. Their vision is buffalo living as wildlife protected under tribal law." Jason Valdez, who is the executive director, board president, and Eastern Shoshone Tribal Buffalo Manager, was key to the reintroduction of bison at Wind River. He gives educational presentations to a wide range of audiences, and there are opportunities for people, including tourists, to see the bison as well as learn about this restoration effort. As such, this is a good example where Indigenous-led tourism is able to connect people with key parts of Native cultures and give them a unique experience that they would be hard-pressed to receive anywhere else. The Wind River Buffalo Initiative was a recipient of considerable funds from the Wind River Sage Fund, also known as WRSF. The vast majority of funds that WRSF was able to dole out are part of a 2024 grant from the Department of Commerce entitled Distressed Area Recompete Pilot Program. This is, quote, "an effort to create renewed economic opportunity in communities that have for too long been forgotten." Through this grant and other fundraising initiatives, the WRSF has more than $40 million set up for projects on the reservation. While a variety of projects covering a number of different topics will utilize these funds, one of the projects focuses on bringing ecotourism to the reservation. The Buffalo Initiative is set to construct a 14,400 square foot tribal buffalo center in Morton. In November of 2025, WRSF officially chose a RET design group to design the center, and construction is moving forward. This center is expected to support 15 full-time and 6 part-time jobs. Further, funds for ecotourism are being channeled into outdoor recreation. A new Eastern Shoshone and Northern Arapaho tribal fish and game headquarters is set to be constructed in Fort Washakie and is intended to include an ecotourism complex with a museum, offices, and storage facility, as well as creating 16 full-time jobs. Additionally, outdoor recreational infrastructure is set to have an influx of investment. Plans have been created to update and restore trails at Mosquito Park, Washakie Park, and St. Lawrence Basin, as well as build bathrooms, boat ramps, and picnic areas at sites like Bowl, Dinwoody, Moccasin, and Ray Lakes. Ray Lake, which is south of Fort Washakie, is considered to have, quote, some of the best fishing in the county. The lake is used for a number of activities, including boating, fishing, and water skiing. However, if you are not a tribal member, you will need to obtain a tribal permit in order to recreate on tribal land. All of these initiatives are Indigenous-led and are created with the intent to not only promote the Wind River region as a premier location for outdoor enthusiasts, but also to, quote, maximize the resulting economic benefits for tribal members. These economic benefits can help uplift struggling communities and bring jobs to rural areas where people may not have as many opportunities. It should also be noted that while many tourism initiatives on the Wind River Reservation are large-scale institutional and governmental operations, there are also families and individuals who engage in smaller-scale tourism. For example, the Wind River Wild Horse Sanctuary is a family-run operation. It primarily exists as a sanctuary for over 250 Mustangs, while also being a working cattle ranch. The Oldham family operates this outfit and offers guests guided tours of the sanctuary, as well as the ability to engage with their visitor center, which, quote, features a curated interpretive display describing the importance of the horse in the culture and traditions of Native Americans, as well as the history of wild horses in North America. Further, individual tribal members often sell art and traditional craftwork to visitors on the reservation. There's a long history of Indigenous people selling items like blankets and baskets to non-natives. We see the continuation of this tradition when tourists stop by places like St. Stephen's Art Center or the Wind River Trading Company, where they can purchase native artwork and beadwork made by local artists. Tourism on the Wind River Reservation comes in a variety of forms, and Indigenous tribes have to navigate the unique challenges of allowing tourism and recreation on tribal lands. However, for tourists, being able to engage with Native cultures and people is often an enriching and educational experience. So the next time you find yourself passing through the Wind River Reservation, either as a local or a tourist, consider stopping in at Fort Washakie's Cultural Center, visit Sacagawea's and Chief Washakie's graves, tour St. Stephen's, buy Native artwork, or go see the bison and wild horses roam. Engaging with Native cultures in Wyoming means connecting with the heart of the West and with the people who have always called this land home. That's it for this season of the Rediscover the Winds podcast. Next month, we will release a special episode focusing on America 250, and then our third season will continue with episodes focusing on the 1920s in Fremont County. Rediscover the Winds, a Wyoming history podcast, is supported in part by funding from Wyoming Humanities and the Wind River Cultural Centers Foundation. The WRCCF is a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping Fremont County museums preserve our Wyoming and Wind River cultural and natural history by directly supporting the efforts of the Du Bois Museum, the Pioneer Museum in Lander, and the Riverton Museum. To learn more, visit www.windriverccf.com and help us conserve our past while enriching our present. Thank you.